In America, you're taxed where you work, you're taxed where you spend, you're taxed when you save, you're taxed when you die. But the worst one is when you are taxed for owning your own home. Your name's on the deed, but you still pay rent to the government every single year through property taxes. And now Florida's governor wants to blow that system up and eliminate property taxes. Ron DeSantis proposed to eliminate property taxes forever, and he's starting with $1,000 check to millions of homeowners this year. I'm going to explain to you why this proposal will never happen, and it's actually just a publicity stunt. Let's jump in. First thing is, it is true. We are absolutely taxed on pretty much everything here in the United States. Your federal income tax that you pay to the federal government is 10 to 37%. It's a lot of money if you're in a state that also has state income taxes. It can add another 6 to 9% depending on where you are. You're taxed when you get paid income, which is up to 15.3%. This is for Social Security and Medicaid and Medicare, and this is for employees and self-employed. If you're an employee, it's half of that and your employer matches it. You have your state sales tax. So in Florida, it's 6%. And then they have local county taxes on top of that. That can be another 1.52% as well. You have use taxes, which is 6%. You have the property tax on the house that you own. In the Florida, it's about 0.7% of assessed value. You can get a homestead exemption for you, but man, it's still a big hit. And then you have excise taxes. This is taxes on specific products like fuel, tobacco, insurance premiums. Think of the hotel taxes out there. But you also have dock stamp taxes. So you actually get taxed when you get a loan for real estate or mortgages, or you buy a car. There's all of these different taxes in which way the government raises revenue, and it is absolutely out of control and leaves a lot of Americans questioning, why am I paying so much in taxes, and where is my money going, and how are we paying so much in taxes, but the government has a wild deficit on the federal level? So I understand consumers and Floridians are frustrated with Congress. They don't understand how we could be in so much debt when they're already taking so much money from us. Where is the money going and what needs to happen? So DeSantis is out here saying, look, property taxes effectively require homeowners to pay rent to the government, and constitutional protections for Florida homeowners require an approval of all the voters in 2026 to remove property taxes. They need 60% of the popular vote in Florida to get rid of property taxes. In the meantime, Floridians need relief. So he proposed a plan that's $1,000 rebate check to each homesteaded property. And if the legislature acts on this new plan, we can get it done this year. So he's very out for this specific issue. Obviously, it rallies his voter base because people hate paying taxes. A lot of people who are voting are generally older generations that honestly are the boomers, and they own a lot of real estate. So this is a huge benefit to that base that would be voting for him. And this is just how politicians work, right? Everybody gives to the people who vote them in. You should own your property free and clear, says DeSantis at a recent roundtable in Jacksonville, which is where I live. I think to say that somebody that's been in their house for 35 years has got to keep ponying up money for property taxes. You don't own your home if that is the case, which is really true because the government will come take your house and they will auction it off if you do not pay your property taxes. So for homesteaded properties, this proposal would impact about 5.1 million Floridians who would benefit, but this honestly would not help renters. It'd primarily help the boomers who own real estate, other people who own real estate around in Florida. So there's a tale of two Floridas. Real estate industry is torn over the push to eliminate property taxes because where would the funding come from? That would make up for the difference of about $50 billion that's raised through property taxes and distributed through the counties. DeSantis's proposal could transform Florida's housing market while raising questions about alternative revenue sources. So where does the money come from? Obviously, the taxes on a property level fund a lot of different things. Florida eliminating property taxes, frankly, to me, is simply just a publicity stunt. It doesn't even make sense because the reality is the counties, municipalities, and school districts and special tax districts are the ones who levy property taxes, not the state. So this really changes the dynamic of where the money flows to and where it goes. His first attempt was that $1,000 rebate for full-time residents. It failed, and it was highly opposed in the Florida legislature. Why? Because the services have to be funded somehow. The money does not just magically appear out of nowhere. The government has to, pay for all the services that it provides. Property tax revenue is approximately $50 billion in Florida annually. It pays for education, law enforcement, emergency services. And one of the ways that DeSantis is proposing that we get rid of, that we can reduce the property taxes is having Doge style cuts to cut almost everything. Let's look through every single budget to cut as much as humanly possible. So that way we can get these tax revenues down. Now, here's what's happening in Jacksonville. A Jacksonville councilman, Rory Diamond, said Florida Doge is coming to the city to identify and report on excessive spending in city and county at the city and county level. We're just on the doing the surface stuff with Duval Doge, Diamond said. The real cuts, like the governor has been honest about, cutting funding for DEI, cutting funding for illegal aliens, and going after totally unnecessary programs that have been created. That's what we need to do. And if it takes someone from the outside to help us do it, let's go. That's his attitude towards it. So Florida Doge sent a letter to Mayor Donna Deegan's office saying that Jacksonville was identified for further review in an on-site visit from Florida Doge. The letter acknowledges that Jacksonville has taken steps to reduce millage rates on residents, but the letter alleges that property values have increased. This is a really important point. Rising property values have pushed annual property tax collections by over $400 million since 2020, a 57% increase. This is out of control because we saw home prices rise about 52% over the last 5 years. This growing burden on property owners far outpaces inflation and the modest growth in population over that time, the letter reads in part. So the question is, if we have all this additional revenue coming in, where is the money going? Why is the city not becoming better and better? What is going on? Like taxpayers have a lot of questions about how this is being spent. So Doge is going to come in and investigate. The biggest issue is, how do you generate local revenue if we don't have property taxes? So if it's not distributed on a county level, then it would potentially be out of a state level. Would all the counties have to go and beg Tallahassee for an allocation to their area? What would it be based on? Would it be based on population, what the needs are? How will the funds be distributed? Would this take the power away from local governments and put it in the hands of the state governments, which I don't know is a good thing? It should actually be, I think, like local municipalities probably know better what their community needs than the actual state government. And so this is a huge question mark, and this is one of the question marks of why it's unlikely for this to pass or be considered. And there's going to be a lot of resistance to it. Now, right now, the Florida sales tax is 6%. The math shows us that if we were to get rid of the property taxes across all of Florida, it would require us to raise our sales tax from 6% to 12% to make up that difference. This is a massive, massive increase. And frankly, a lot of people believe that this tax difference would really impact the poor the most, who live paycheck to paycheck. About 68% of the people in the United States live paycheck to paycheck. So this is a huge deal. If 6%, everything basically costs 6% more. Keep this in mind with the tariffs as well that are coming through. Goldman Sachs that says that 70% of the tariff is passed through to the consumer and only 30% is eaten by the home country and the suppliers and the distributors. So this means, basically we're already having a federal sales tax through the form of a tariff, essentially the way that it's set up. And now if we additionally have state taxes on top of that, I mean, the consumer is getting totally maxed out. They're completely in debt, and this could really hurt them. So I understand the idea, hey, none of us like paying taxes, but the reality is we need to find a way to reduce our spending, which I think is really good. And I'm excited about Doge cutting things that really aren't necessary. And that's an important, starting place. But where are they going to make up the difference, and how is it going to be structured with the local communities is a great question. Frankly, Floridian voters, 70% of them are opposed to this proposal of getting rid of taxes if it means that we double the sales tax to 12%. And they mention that the state legislature will get all of the power in the funding of the purse, and how will the money be distributed is the biggest question of why this is potentially going to be held up and not happen. Frankly, when we look at it from a country view, the average effective homeowner property tax rate, this is for 2023. Florida is one of the lowest at 0.79. Comes from the Tax Foundation's calculations of the Census Bureau data. Florida is not a very high tax state from a property tax perspective. In the first place, there's other states around the country that have a much larger issue. And frankly, property taxes are not the main issue here in Florida. The actual issue that we're having is an affordability crisis. The prices are just absolutely insane where the locals are priced out. The only people who can really afford to purchase right now are people from out of state that are used to a higher cost of living. They coming from California, New York, New Jersey, areas like that, and they're coming down purchasing cash. But if you're a local, it's actually cheaper to rent now than to buy, and those renters are not going to benefit from these type of policies. Higher paying jobs are in the state. We need higher paying jobs. We need more industry. There's a lot of investor speculation driving up rent prices that makes it super unaffordable for people to live here and just takes more of their paychecks. And we can only control one of these things. So the government is also overspending. That is a massive issue. What are they spending all this money on? Why do they keep raising revenue every single year and finding new ways to tax us? So I think this is important. I can see both sides. I also am not a fan of just cutting things blindly. I think that we really need to look and see what the value is of everything that is coming through. But still, DeSantis wants to eliminate the property taxes. My prediction is that that will never happen because of the structural issues that will create. And frankly, let's say it did happen. What do you think would happen to property values? I'd like for you to comment below. Share your opinion. What do you think property values would go up? Do you think they would go down? Do you think more primary resident people would move here and stay here longer because they would want to make Florida their primary area just to save, probably about $10,000 a year, because that's what a lot of people pay in tax, between $6,000 and $10,000 on their property. What do you think would happen in Florida if property taxes were eliminated and sales tax was moved from 6% to 12%, because that's how they would make up the revenue? Love to hear from you. Thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you soon.